China, at the dawn of the 20th century, was a nation on its knees. The once mighty Qing dynasty, which had ruled for over 2 centuries, was crumbling from within. The country fractured, splintering into territories controlled by ruthless warlords. These regional despots taxed the people into destitution and fought endless bloody wars for control. This internal chaos was compounded by external humiliation. Foreign powers circled China like vultures. The Chinese people were now subjected to foreign domination in their own homeland. Poverty was not just an economic condition. It was a national disgrace, a constant reminder of their collective powerlessness. It was into this crucible of chaos, poverty, and national shame that Mao Zedong was born in 1893. He was drawn to the promise of total transformation. He was not just a man. He was the embodiment of a nation's fury and its desperate hope for salvation, no matter the cost. 2 major political forces emerged, both promising to rescue the nation, but offering starkly different paths. The Kuomintang, or KMT, appealed to urban elites, envisioning a modern, unified republic built on military strength. The Communists, inspired by the Bolshevik Revolution, planned to empower peasants and workers through violent transformation. The breaking point arrived in 1927. In a sudden and vicious turn, Chiang Kai-shek unleashed a brutal purge. Thousands of CCP members, labor organizers, and sympathizers were rounded up, tortured, and executed. It ignited a bloody civil war between the nationalists and the communists that would last for decades. Forced to flee the cities, Mao Zedong argued for a radical departure. The true revolutionary force was not the urban worker, but the vast, impoverished peasantry. In his rural base, he honed his tactics. Land was violently confiscated from landlords and redistributed, irrevocably binding the peasants to the communist cause. After the grueling Long March, the communists found refuge in Yan'an. It became a laboratory where Mao would perfect his model of totalitarian control. Behind a utopian facade, Mao launched brutal purges, breaking down individual thought and remaking every member into a loyal instrument of the party. The Second World War fatally weakened the nationalists, while Mao used it as an opportunity to expand communist influence, preserving his strength for the real enemy, the KMT. With the war over, the tide turned with shocking speed. The KMT, rotten with corruption and demoralization, simply disintegrated. On October 1st, 1949, Mao Zedong proclaimed the founding of the People's Republic of China. His voice, broadcast across Tiananmen Square, declared, "The Chinese people have stood up." For millions, this was a moment of profound hope and catharsis. But the brief honeymoon ended as the iron fist behind the velvet glove began to crush all opposition. Quotas for arrests and executions were sent down from central leadership. At least 712,000 people were executed in the campaign to suppress counter-revolutionaries. Millions more were sent to forced labor camps, a system modeled on the Soviet Gulag, becoming a central feature of Mao's state. In 1958, Mao Zedong, impatient with conventional progress, launched the Great Leap Forward, a utopian fantasy of catapulting China into a communist paradise overnight. Private life was abolished. Peasants were forced into enormous communes, surrendering their land, tools, and even their cooking pots. The family unit was targeted for destruction. Everyone was forced to eat in communal canteens, where food was used as a tool of control. The Second Front was a manic obsession with steel. Mao commanded the masses to produce it themselves in millions of backyard furnaces. The very tools for cooking and planting the next harvest were melted down in a futile effort to meet impossible quotas. The result was an unmitigated disaster. The furnaces produced millions of tons of worthless pig iron, all while farmers were pulled from the fields, leaving crops to rot. Terrified of being punished, local officials began to systematically lie, reporting grain yields that were physically impossible. This pyramid of lies reached Mao himself. who, believing the propaganda, was convinced the Great Leap had produced an agricultural miracle. Based on these fictitious figures, the state demanded its share. It was now waging a war against its own people for a phantom harvest. By the winter of 1959, the lie had given way to the horrific reality of mass starvation. Parents, unable to watch their children slowly starve, were forced into unthinkable choices. Some sold their children for a few pounds of grain. In the most extreme cases, which were horrifyingly widespread, cannibalism became a means of survival. When Defense Minister Peng Dehuai cautiously criticized the leap's excesses in a private letter, Mao's reaction was volcanic. Peng was purged, sending a terrifying message. Telling the truth about the famine was political suicide. Mao knew about the deaths. He chose to do nothing, refusing to open the state granaries and letting the famine burn itself out rather than admit his monumental error. Historians estimate that between 30 and 55 million people died. It remains the single deadliest famine in human history. The number of victims exceeds the most widely accepted figures for Stalin's purges and the Holocaust combined. This was not a policy failure. It was mass murder by policy. Following this horror, and to reassert his authority, Mao unleashed the Cultural Revolution, plunging his nation into another decade of chaos, violence, and civil strife. Hundreds of thousands more were killed, and millions were persecuted, leaving a legacy of trauma and a generation stripped of their education and culture. Yet today, Mao remains a figure of reverence, his portrait still hanging over the gates of Tiananmen Square. This is made possible by the most sophisticated censorship apparatus in the world. The memory of tens of millions of victims is actively suppressed by the party that caused their deaths. The question, was he a visionary or a tyrant, is a false debate. A leader is not a visionary if his vision is built on the corpses of his people. The evidence is clear, the testimony is heartbreaking, and the verdict of history must be unambiguous. We have a duty not only to mourn the dead, but to learn from how they died, and to never, ever forget.